views and opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of Access Fort Wayne, the Allen County Public Library, or any other supporting groups. If you'd like to produce a show, call us at 260-421-1250.
Hello, and welcome to the American Veteran. I'm Dale Parrish, your host. My co-host this evening is Carl Farler, and our guest today is John Simerman. John is a 22-year veteran of the Marine Corps. He served in Korea and Vietnam, achieved the rank of Master Sergeant. He was awarded the 2 Bronze Stars for Valor, Purple Heart, among others. Welcome to the show, John.
Thank you.
When did you join the Marines, John?
I joined September 24th, 1949.
Peacetime.
Peacetime.
Nice time to go in.
It was just right.
A few months later, Korean War broke out.
We left, I was stationed at Camp Lejeune, and one day they just closed the gates down on us. No one was allowed out the gate. No one was allowed to go anywhere. They loaded us on troop trains, transported us cross country to California, and went through all of our inoculations. And being that I was the boot, they called me, because I just got out of boot camp, I was armed with a BAR. It seems like all of the people out of boot camp always got the BAR because nobody liked the BAR. I liked the BAR. It was heavy, but I had good firepower, and that's what it's all about.
They're still using the BAR.
Yes, they are.
Yeah. When did you, they put you on ship then and sent you right to?
They loaded us on ship and went to Colby, I believe it was, where we combat loaded our ships. I was lucky, the people I was with, we got loaded on a Japanese civilian LST that our Navy had gave to the Japanese. We didn't have enough ships, evidently. So the ship that I made the landing at Incheon on was Japanese manned. On the way to the Incheon, we hit a typhoon, and there's nothing, if anybody knows about an LST, it's a flat bottom boat with the doors open up on the front. There's nothing better than getting caught in a typhoon in a boat that's flat bottomed with the whole bottom deck full of 105 ammunition and the trucks tied down on top of that, and then Japanese manned and smelling fish heads and rice for their food, and it didn't go over well. We made the landing into Incheon Harbor, and when they opened the doors up to allow us, amphibious ducks is what I made the landing on, the ship swung sideways and hit us and almost dumped us right overboard. I was ready to go to Walmedo rather than stay much longer on that Japanese manned ship. Then we got into Walmedo, is where I went with the unit I was with.
Did all of you make it on to Walmedo?
The island was pretty much secured when we got there. The infantry had already took the island. However, they did overlook some who were hidden bunkers. In my experience, the first experience in combat, I was on a working party that night down on the causeway, which connected Walmedo and Incheon, and some of the North Koreans that they had bypassed decided they wanted to make a move, and everybody, I think, on the island was trigger happy that night, and everybody cranked off a few rounds and then finished up what was left on it.
I guess that bay has one of the highest tides in the world. 35 or 40 feet.
It was strange because when the tide goes out, all the ships were setting out in the mud flats.
Yeah. No
water, no nothing. And there was LST setting out in the water where should have been water, was nothing but mud flats. Had Incheon not been taken and secured good, if they'd had any firepower at all, they could have sure did some shooting out there with them, all them ships stuck in the mud. But then the tide comes back in, and they're all floating again.
Yeah. Did it take long to take Incheon?
Incheon was a tough battle. Being a big city, city combat, building to building is always tough combat.
Yeah.
Because you got to take building to building, you got to go through every building, bottom to top floor, and then go to the next building, and they were naturally everywhere. They had bunkers, had street bunkers across the streets with huge bags that they filled with sand, and so you had to take these one at a time and just and work your way through.
They can see you, but you're hard to see them.
Right, you're in the open and they're covered.
Exactly.
So you got to go from building to building and street to street until you take it all.
It was pretty well demolished, wasn't it? From the
It was pretty well blowed up because the artillery had flattened a lot of it, because the building didn't really matter. It's the men's lives you got to save, so you got to blow up the building to get the enemy out, and that's what you got to do.
Sure. We left through Incheon ourselves, and it was nothing but partial buildings standing there,
Lots of rubble.
concrete walls.
It reminded you a lot of the pictures of the Second War, what you've seen in the cities, is what
sure,
it did.
Sure. From Incheon, you went to Kimpo Airfield?
Went from Incheon and took Sewell, and then we moved back and boarded ship again for the landing at Wonsan.
Oh, yeah, took all the way around.
Yes.
Went up to Wonsan. How long did you do? I guess you didn't make a landing right away at
No,
Wonsan.
Pierce Bob Hope had his show going while we were sitting out in the water running back. Ships were running, the convoys we were in had to run back and forth because they had mined the waters, and we spent all of our time running back and forth while the minesweepers cleared the mines so we could get into Wonsan. So we missed the Bob Hope show. We never did hear the end of that one.
Yeah. Well, when you made the landing at Incheon, the 7th Division was with you, part of the division.
Yes.
And some of the South Koreans, I think they went inland and shut off the supply to the North Koreans that was in the south part of Korea.
They were supposed to move inland when they broke out, the Pusan perimeter broke out. They were coming north, driving the North Koreans back north again, and we're supposed to get over and cut them off and block them so they couldn't go any further. But a lot of them still got away and got north.
Yeah, a lot of them I think just faded back into the hills, or with the.
The good thing about it was that they could switch to civilian clothes. You didn't know who was who.
Yeah.
You know, one from the other.
But that pincher movement of West Coast and East Coast sort of worked okay right there close to the 38th parallel.
Yes,
right?
it did. It shut off a lot.
Very successful in getting them out of the South Korea.
You're right.
Yeah.
And then they shut supplies off, and without supplies, you don't fight.
Right.
That's right. And they carry their supplies with them.
Their supply was the infantrymen for the Korean and the Chinese. They carried like I refer to it as a sock, and it would be about this long. It'd be about that big around, and inside that sock they'd have it full of rice, and they would tie this thing together, and they would just throw it right across their neck, and that's the way that when they traveled with that rice, and that's all they ate was rice and dogs.
Yeah. So their food supply was right with them, and
They
could keep right on going.
Yeah, they could live off the land.
Sure.
When you did finally land at Wonsan, you went north from there?
The unit I with went down to a town called Kojo.
Went south.
We relieved an ROK unit down there who supplied us with information that the enemy was no longer in that area. Our intelligence supposedly said the enemy was no more in that area. So we spread our lines quite thin that night, much thinner than we ever would do in a combat situation. So happens that there's a large unit of guerrillas, North Korean guerrillas out there. And that night they hit us, and they hit us pretty hard. And due to our lines being separated, like so far apart, they did get through our lines. A lot of guys got bayoneted in their sleeping bags, didn't even have a chance to get out of them because they were on top of us before you knew they were even there.
Yeah, terrible.
So we lost a lot of men that night over that one.
Yeah. And from there, then you went north.
Went north to Chinhungni. Chenhung-ni was the main supply dump for the 1st Marine Division. So we had a perimeter set up around the supply dump, and the rest of the division went on up to the reservoir, Coterie and those places.
Yeah.
Okay.
We stayed there for, made patrols to various places while we were out, go out on combat patrol. We went to a small town. We had an engineering outfit that was in the town of Sudong, which was south of us about 5 miles. They had got cornered down there by the Chinese, and we had to go bail them out and get them out of there and bring them back. So the company I was with, we took a Army Quad 50 and an Army Dual 40 with us, which I might say is firepower that I wish I had around me all the time.
Yeah.
A Quad 50 with the firepower that thing has, I would not want to be on the receiving end of it at all.
No.
But they were cornered, the engineers were cornered down there, so we had to go down and get them out. On the way down, we would travel on the road, 2 files on each side of the road, off to our right flank. All of a sudden, a Chinese guy, one of their soldiers, he just stood up. We didn't even know he was there. And all of a sudden, he just stood up. He had brand new clothes. Everything was brand new. But he didn't want to fight no more. So, and he just decided that's the time to quit. So he just stood up and raised his hands. That was our first prisoner.
Just a kid, was he?
Yeah, young. He had the quilted uniform on and the whole works of the hat that they wore and the tennis shoes that they wore. And we did get the engineer outfit back out and brought him back into our perimeter. Firepower is the thing that does it.
Did they have artillery up in there?
Yes, we had 105s. That's what I was. I was a forward observer with a 105 unit. We traveled with the infantry. Our job as forward observer was to find the enemy and do away with them.
Yeah.
Various rounds we could use. We could use white phosphorus rounds on them. We could use air bursts on them. A lot of different choices.
You didn't have the BAR at that time, and
No.
it was artillery.
No, I went up on FO at that time.
Forward observer, sure.
Yeah. That white phosphorus is wicked stuff.
White phosphorus, if you get it on it, you're in deep trouble.
Yeah.
Because the only way to get it off you is to dig it off you. You got to dig it. It'll burn. If you had a piece of white phosphorus in your hand, it'll burn clear through your hand and fall on the ground.
Yeah. Right.
There's no way. As long as it's got air, it's going to burn.
It burns, right.
I think it burns without air.
It gets you good.
Yeah.
Right.
You usually use the white phosphorus for troops in the open.
Yeah.
And it makes them move a little faster.
Yeah. Yes.
Makes them run like crazy.
It does.
Yep. Nobody wants to get hit with that, that's
No.
for sure.
No. And air burst is scary.
Yeah, because there's
Air burst
not much defense
another
against
round
it.
is used for troops in the open.
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
it goes off, it covers quite an area,
It does.
doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Use a delayed fuse for bunkers and that kind of stuff. Yeah. So, what happened after the Marine Corps started back out? You know, after they'd been overrun and started back out of, you wasn't really with them. You was south of them.
We were at Shinhang-ni. When they had the division started to come back, there was a bridge, and the Chinese had blown the bridge, and they had placed heavy troops up on Hill 1081, which looked down on the bridge. In order to replace the bridge, Hill 1081 had to be taken, and Hill 1081, it was 1081. I don't know how high it was, but I could watch aircraft fly underneath and see the pilot in the cockpit. So it was up there pretty high. Once Hill 1081 was taken, then they could replace the bridge, and the rest of the division was come across the bridge and move on down towards Shinhang-ni. Yeah. And when the last part of the division came out, then we came out and brought up the rear guard of the rest of the division. And from there we went to Hamhung.
I read a little bit about that bridge they dropped. I guess they dropped twice as many pieces that they actually needed to make sure that they did have enough. Then it was a little bit short.
The first drop, if I remember right, was not a good drop, and they had to make the second drop.
Yeah, a little bit short, and even then,
Yeah.
they had to take bulldozers and fill in in order to use it.
That drop you're talking about was done by aircraft, right?
Yes.
And could they haul large pieces?
I think it was a C-119, the flying boxcar.
Oh,
Was the one
okay.
that dropped, opened up the back doors. And
Open
dumped
up the
them
back
out.
door and flight
Right.
and push it out. Parachute down.
Right.
Yeah, okay. Without that support there, why, things have been pretty rough, wouldn't it? Getting out.
They could walk down, but it was going to. You was not going to get 2 or 3 battalions in all your vehicles out
No.
because you had to walk. There was no vehicles without the bridge. No vehicle would have ever got out.
Right. So you do what you have to do.
You have to do.
Right.
Was those F-80s that aircraft, or what was they?
The aircraft
you
that
looked
mostly
down on?
gave us support was the Mustang and the Corsair. If I remember right, the Mustangs was flown by Australian and the Corsairs were flown by Marine pilots. I might add, in my opinion, without air support, more of us would have never got. We wouldn't have got out of there. More of us. It was just. In fact, in my home, I have a Corsair sitting on my TV to remind me that
Sure.
that's there. That's what did it for me. And got it. Because they took the aircraft. Chinese were always on the high ground, and the mountains were high, and we were down on a road that this road was barely wide enough for a vehicle to go down. Yeah. On one side was the mountain, on the other side was sheer drop off. And if there people are sitting up there shooting down on you, it's not a good position you want to be in. So you either had to go up the top of the mountain and take them off of it, or you had to have aircraft do the airstrikes. And thankful they were there to take them off the top of the hill. You have to secure the high ground, because if you don't secure the high ground, you're in a lot of trouble.
Yeah. Well, that's always been a combat thing,
Yes.
going way back probably to the Revolutionary War,
Sure was.
take the high ground. Yeah.
Was those planes off a ship, off of carriers, or?
The Corsair,
No.
I think, was, I don't know about the P-51.
No.
There were air bases in South Korea at that time.
Yeah,
So-
Kimpo was one of
Yeah.
them.
So they could have flown up from the south.
Yeah.
Well, when they first started, a lot of them flew all the way from Japan over
Yeah,
and did their airstrikes. I don't know, but that's where they might have come from. I don't know.
Yeah.
But that's wasted fuel. You need the fuel. The more fuel you got, the longer you can stay on target. And that's for us ground pounders. That's what we want. We want that airplane on above us all the time to give us protection.
right.
Even as cold as it was, I guess they even scraped off a landing strip there at the reservoir.
Yeah, before with the reservoir, they did scrape off those pilots that made those landings. I wasn't there. I read a lot of books on it. Those pilots that flew in and out of there, they were good pilots.
Exceptional pilots.
Exceptional pilots they were. 'Cause
Very good.
That was not a good place. But they took all of our wounded out.
Yeah, yeah. And those, like you said, those roads were so narrow. If something broke down, they just had to shove it off the side.
Push it
Right.
off the side,
Yeah.
right?
There's still a lot of them laying up there, probably.
Yeah.
I think that's probably where a lot of our missing troops are.
I think
Over the
so.
side,
Well, maybe not that.
where the road's at.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
narrow road. Yeah. I'd heard about that narrow road before, and
It was
there
not
was no
good.
picnic.
No.
No picnic.
If the vehicle quit, it was just shoved off the side. Is all you could do.
Yeah.
All you could do.
Pretty bitter cold.
The area I was in, not only it was that way all over the place. 25, 30, 35 below zero. You could, there's no way you could, if you wanted water, you had to eat snow because there was no water. Your water was froze. The food was froze. You couldn't build a fire. The Chinese had already burned up all the wood that was around, so there was no wood to burn. So we survived on, at least I did, on crackers that was in our rations. It was the only thing that wasn't froze. You couldn't move your hands. I went out to repair a wire that had broken, and with gloves on, you couldn't do nothing. If you took the gloves off, your fingers wouldn't move. You just couldn't get them to move. So we had to just do the best we could to put the wire together. But weapons was the same way. Weapons won't fire. A weapon that's a recoilless, artillery, for example, the guns fired, but when they went to recoil back, they just went very slow because it was just too cold.
The oil and everything gets real thick.
Vehicles had to run 24 hours a day because if you shut them off, you wasn't going to start them again.
Yeah.
They weren't going to start again.
Somebody, or I read someplace where the troops should use Vitalis hair oil on their weapons.
Yeah, a lot of it was, if you didn't put something like that on them, they weren't going to fire.
Yeah.
And the way the Chinese would attack, they would attack you in mass. And what I mean by mass is, I mean all of a sudden you're looking out there and there's nothing out there, and all of a sudden the whole side of the mountain just raises up and here they come.
Yeah.
So weapons, it's got to be able to fire
Rapidly.
rapidly.
And they fire slow, that's not good.
Automatic, everything, firing slow, that's no good.
Did the enemy have the same problem?
Yes, they did. They had worse. They were dressed worse than we were.
I was going to say that their conditions for them would have been worse than what you guys had it.
A lot of them would surrender because it was just, they thought it was better with us. They wore tennis shoes.
Oh,
And in the wintertime at 25 below zero and about a foot of snow on the ground, a tennis shoe is not good. I've seen Chinese soldiers that surrendered with their feet solid ice.
frozen solid.
Just froze solid. There was nothing you could do for them.
The only thing there would be amputation, right?
They just, about it, about all you could do.
How did you guys make attempts to stay warm?
We had a parka. Our clothing was not adequate whatsoever. We were not prepared for that kind of weather at all. For example, most of us had, including myself, had frostbite because we had boots on. We referred to them as Mickey Mouse boot. What the boot was a rubber boot with a inner sole inside of it. And what this thing would do when you would walk, your feet would sweat.
Right.
And this thing would absorb all that. When you would stop, it would turn to ice inside.
Get cold.
And then you got frostbite. So you had to always change your socks and keep clean socks, dry socks on in order to keep from getting your feet frostbit. But then there's only certain times you can't do that all the time.
Is it safe to say that the 1st Marine Division at the Frozen Chosen, the majority of them had frostbite in their legs?
I would say yes. It took a long, long, long time before a lot of us figured out what was going on with for example, I didn't have any idea. I was having trouble with my feet as I was on the Sheriff's Department for 19 years, and when I would, in Noble County, and when I would stand out doing an accident in the cold weather, my feet would just start to drive me nuts.
Start tingling?
Tingling and itching.
Yeah.
And I couldn't figure out what was going on with them, and I belonged to the Chosen Few, which is an international organization, and we all got together at reunions and they had doctors come in, and we started describing what was going on with our feet, and all of us all of a sudden realized that this was frostbite from that far back in 1950 was doing it to us now.
Well, I was not at the Chosen, but I'll tell you this, I know that lots of the veterans that were not there have the deepest respect for those that were.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's a battle that we look upon with awe, that the guys survived it.
It was an experience.
I guess so.
You finally got out of there through Hong Nam.
Mm-hmm.
I guess there was 100,000 troops who went out through Hong Nam. Yeah. Almost that many civilians.
Civilians, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a big evacuation
Yeah.
port.
And after everybody got out, then they blowed the whole works up.
Destroyed it so nobody else could use it.
Big fireworks display.
I mean, did they load the ship up and leave, or did they have them? Did they load them all up and then leave?
If I remember right, as we loaded up, we left because it was the area for getting ships in was not that big.
Yeah.
They used landing crafts there to get them out to the ships. The
ships came in.
Came into the docks. Tide must have been in then.
Yeah, but at Wonsan it was not the same.
It wasn't?
No, it was just regular open water port.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just Incheon had that bad tide.
Okay, Wonsan didn't have the tide,
no.
Just the mines.
Yeah, just the mines.
Okay, that was enough.
Was they there ready to feed you when you got down to Wonsan? Or to, yeah, not Wonsan.
We got down there, they were giving away, rather than blow it up, they asked us, because we hadn't had nothing to eat but crackers for I don't know how many days. And they were giving away steaks. Well, naturally, you jump right in there and get a steak, but there was no wood or there was anything to build a fire with. So they gave us the steaks. So we, in our minds, we said, now what we got and what we're going to do with them. There was diesel fuel around. So we used diesel fuel and cooked our steaks, and they were as black as this table when they got done cooking on diesel. So you scrape that all off of them. And just,
what'd you use for a grill?
Nothing.
You just put them right on the fire?
Just put them right down there as best you could and cooked them on the grill. And that's how they got black. And take that and scrape that off and just go ahead and eat it. It was pretty good.
Tastes like steak or diesel fuel?
A little bit of both.
Today you probably wouldn't eat something like that.
Yeah.
Was those some of General Almond's steaks, do you think?
I hope they was.
He wasn't very well loved.
No, he was not.
Okay.
Then they took you, after you was on ship, where did you go?
I think we went to Mason, and we stayed at Mason and fought in guerrilla warfare for a while. And then we moved on up and started moving north again.
Yeah. Took it, wait a minute, they took you down where?
Mason.
It's down near Pusan?
It's down, yes, it's down by Pusan.
Yeah.
Just a little bit north of there. The ROKs had bypassed a lot of the enemy down there, and there was a lot of Chinese down in there, so we spent quite a while fighting those guys and clearing them out.
Cleaning them out, sure.
From there on north.
Right, then we went on up north, went through Operation Killer and a few of the other ones.
Yeah. How long was you in Korea?
1 year.
After just 1 year.
1 year.
Not just.
That was enough, wasn't it?
That was enough.
I was going to say,
I certainly didn't mean just.
you certainly had an experience there. Lots of combat and lots of moving forward against the enemy.
I had worked with the Korean Marine Corps for a while. That was quite an experience, firing artillery for them.
Okay.
That was interesting, but quite dangerous, I found out. I'd rather be with my own people.
They bring you back to the States then, or did you go to Japan, or where'd you go?
I think I went to Japan, then came home from Japan on ship into San Francisco.
Yeah.
Well, that's enough experience to last a person a lifetime. I imagine you've got good memories, and I imagine you've got bad memories.
Oh, yes.
And proud to be a Marine?
You betcha.
I've never talked to one that wasn't.
Once a Marine, always a Marine, and that's the way it is, and that's the way it stays.
Exactly. Understand that.
Well, we're just about out of time. Appreciate, John, I appreciate you coming on the program.
Thank you.
Carl, I appreciate you filling in today for Bud.
Well, my pleasure. Nice talking to you, John.
Also mine.
I want you to come back for another show, and we'll talk about Vietnam and everything.
Vietnam was different.
Yeah.
Very different.
Okay.
I want to thank you for joining us. If you enjoyed the program, we're on every Friday night at 7:30. Just remember that freedom is not free. Thank you, and good night.